Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tuesday edition, October 6th, of Maximum Growth in Live, the Growth Tank edition. Seth, so good to see you today. Over here next to me, Seth Price of Blue Shark Digital and Price Benowitz Law Firm in DC, Maryland, Virginia. I am Jay Ruane of Ruane Attorneys here in Connecticut, as well as Get Firm Flex, your social media marketing firm for lawyers. And Seth, I got to ask you a serious question because it's something after last week's conversation. I've done some soul searching. I spent the weekend frustrated, pulling out what little hair I have here, but I finally got revalidated by Google local service ads. And literally, it came online today at 11:45 a.m. and we got our first call at 11:53 a.m. The client retained. I mean, 8 minutes and we're back in.
Yeah, look, it is a beta test. It is,
Yeah.
as you see, very hard to get in. You have to get in and get verified. So it's a two-step process, right? You get
Right.
in and you need Pinkerton to come through, which is way backed up. You are persistent and to a certain extent lucky. You get the right person at the right time. So anybody who gets in during these weeks, there are going to be a handful of bonus cases at a very good ROI, no question about it.
Okay. So here's my question for you, and it's something that I've been agonizing over. We talked about how I didn't really invest in SEO for, I don't know, 2 decades. And now I'm looking at the SERPs, right? The SERPs are search engine results page, SERP, for people who don't know what that is. And I'm looking at the SERPs and I'm thinking, there's Google screened on top. And I'm talking just about Google, right? I'm not talking about other platforms, but Google controls like
Google's everything.
93%.
So
Google's
we'll
everything.
start, our conversation starts and ends there.
Okay. So we've got the screened on top.
Right.
Then we've got the pay-per-click.
Right.
Then we have GMB.
Correct.
Then we get to organic listings.
Correct.
And you're going to get 10, at best, 10 slots in that organic placement. Is SEO dead? I mean, because
right.
I'm
no,
thinking
it's a great question. I go through this myself as a guy who loves SEO and has built a firm through it. The answer is no, it's not.
okay,
First,
let me frame my question because I want to make sure that all of our listeners are able to sort of understand it. Because I see that attention spans are dropping so dramatically. We talked about this with Shankman, right? Here's the thing that I want to tell you that blows my mind out. It was only a week ago that we heard about the Trump $750 tax thing, right? It seems like a year ago in our collective consciousness, and it's only been about 8 days. Attention spans are so moving so quickly that as people go forward, they're going to get to the first thing and make that connection, and that's it. They're not going to do the deep dives that when you and I first started out building these websites, people would fill out long form intake questionnaires of 75 questions for those early adopters, whatever you want to call them. And I'm wondering if I have sort of missed the boat on SEO because you know what they say, where's the best place to hide a dead body on the internet? Page 2 of the Google search pages. So I'm wondering how should I approach this? And I'm looking to you because I trust you to give me some guidance on this issue because I could just dump all my money into LSA, and if I do that, looks like I'm going to be getting some valuable cases out of it.
well, a couple things. One, LSA is just here, shows in certain markets, certain times, not always. Is it clear that Google's doing a land grab? Yes, and assuming there are no antitrust issues, we can talk about that, whether or not that's there to stay. At some point, Google will push far enough, it'll get pushed back, but that's not what we're playing for. Your question, a legitimate one, right? It used to be, I did a bunch of speeches when it was just before LSA, when it was just paid maps organic, you were playing for like 9. Now it keeps getting squeezed more and more. But this is what I'll tell you. First, just like pay-per-click in competitive markets, people get squeezed out. You get to the point where you're working for Google, right? Where the clicks get so expensive that we are thankfully so fortunate in our market organically to do well that we don't play a huge pay-per-click game in the personal injury space because the clicks have gotten so you can make money there, but you end up paying so much to Google that you're basically have a new business partner. Right?
Can I talk about that? Because one of the things that I did when I got re-verified is that I actually added personal injury to LSA. And I'm looking and they're telling me that a lead from that would cost me like $60. And
Well,
I'm
right.
thinking
And that's what thing.
a pay-per-click personal injury case for $60. I'll give you all my money at that rate.
Right. And
You
look,
know,
God bless and gobble up what you can while you can. That said, that's not forever. Google just announced, surprise, surprise, that the LSAs are going to an auction format. So before long, not only are they going to cost as much, but possibly more than what you're paying for in the pay per click. So if you want to differentiate it, eventually, my take is that Google's going to make that almost like lead gen, like we're used to from Total Attorneys or any of these other foregone companies, that you're basically going to end up paying per call. If it's an auction, those auctions are going to go to $200-$300 per call, which all of a sudden, you better be closing a heck of a lot of those calls in order to make that cost effective. So I think a couple things. One is we are right now in a little bubble where, yes, there is an opportunity, just like when pay-per-click started. We could buy clicks for 50 cents a piece, and we thought we were geniuses, and we built our law firms during those early days with those cheap clicks. But two things. Number of people love the fact that you see the reviews. Now, reviews are an LSA, understood, but that 3-pack with the map is pretty darn powerful. And the only way you're really going to get there is to have some SEO juice behind it. It's very hard to get in the 3-pack just randomly. There are tricks, like you put, keyword stuff, a name. I looked online today for the King of Connecticut DUI. Ruane Attorneys wasn't in the 3-pack. And I'm like, whoa, that just seems. And to me, it's not an either or. When you're a developed firm like yourself, why would you not want both? We've talked a lot personally about the hit that's taken place during COVID. My sense is if you were more diversified online, you would be getting, not look, there are less cases, but it would be less of an impact. Organic search reaches places that nothing else hits on long tail searches, right? There are
sure,
people who say,
absolutely.
I Google everything and you come up. Now, look, you have a lot of SEO. We're let's not overstate it in the sense that you produce a tremendous amount of content. You've spoken, so it's not like there are no links. But you haven't played that hardcore game. And there are people, I know, I work with some, I know other people who work with others, who have beaten you out, even though you are legitimately the name statewide that everybody offline would do. You have not replicated that online authority. So you're giving up for those people that go to organic, or when on the times when either ads aren't showing, LSA isn't showing, the map isn't showing for many different things. A, B, the 3-pack, while you're in it, I'm sure quite frequently, there are many more opportunities I believe you have given up by not getting it. Now you've done so well. You could say, who cares? You could make money different ways, but there's definitely opportunity there.
Right. And let me talk to our audience a little bit about that, because it's come up on the show a couple of times, and I want to talk a little bit about why I don't want to be the biggest gorilla in the room, or the biggest elephant, or the Godzilla and that type of thing in my state across the board.
I can't wait for this answer.
Well, here's why. You have a client of Blue Shark, who's a good friend of yours, has become a good friend of mine, Mark Sherman, phenomenal lawyer based in southwestern Connecticut, who does great work, right? I mean, he's a good lawyer and he does a lot of good work. If I came into and went toe to toe and at him, I would lose all the referrals that he sends me in places other of Connecticut where he gets calls from, and he doesn't want to make that drive. And there are guys like him in multiple parts of the state that, as long as I'm seen as just another competitor and not this beast, if they get a call that's an hour away, well, they know Jay goes there, and so they'll send me that case. And so I kind of want to keep my enemies a little closer, because in that respect, I can benefit too from not coming in and trying to be this big gorilla who just destroys everybody. Like the Home Depot does to all the small mom and pop hardware stores.
I don't, Jay, I don't fully buy it.
Okay.
To me, let me tell you why. I get the part of that argument where you say, I don't want to go into another market because I'm getting cross referrals. To me, it better be a lot of cross referrals to not do it, but fine, right? Bunch of reasons. And I still don't fully buy that argument. But for your home market, for you not to dominate it, the way you put a thing on a listserv and say, who should you go to in Connecticut for DUI? Like it's amazing to watch the results for Jay Ruane. You have so much authority. You're like one of the few people friendly with both DUI associations. You speak. you go to like B2B lawyer conferences and you set up a booth. You walk the talk. You do stuff pro bono and for Innocence Project type cases. You've done all of that. So all you would need to do is connect your offline authority online, and you'd have that much more. Now, look, you've done stuff like state contracts. Nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
my philosophy when I started was I wanted to get away from that. As you've seen and you've had the issues, it's a labor issue, managing of people issue. There are headaches. You have regulatory issues if you screw something up with money. There are all these different things. Plus, it's not that much per hour. So to me,
Oh, I know. I mean, we basically lose money on those cases, but
right.
it's one of the things that we're committed to that area of law just from a philosophical standpoint.
God bless. So do your pro bono is my attitude. The low bono I dislike because I feel it's in between the two. Again, there are reasons for
Right.
doing everything. But what I'm saying is I wanted to develop a marketing plan that would allow me to not have to use the court-appointed work. That was sort of when we started. That was our goal. Dave was a public defender, was doing court-appointed work when we started. And so to me, it's about executing on digital excellence to give yourself the best chance, not just for paid. It's not like you shouldn't do paid. If paid works, God bless and do it. There's nothing better in my mind when we had the paid result, the map result, and the organic result.
Yeah,
That's a home run.
that's the best when you look at the page and it's basically your name over and over and over again.
But that's really what I was trying to do myself, which is it's one thing to have a paid ad. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's why some of the TV advertisers have that extra bump in the PI space because you know their name and you see their name, but I don't have that. I'm not on TV. So for me, if I am able to get that trifecta, now I'll need a fourfecta, but quadfecta? Basically
A quinella.
So if I can go from, if I can get the LSA, the paid, the 3-pack, by the time they get down to organic, they feel like they know you. And so to me, I want the Jay Ruane feeling that people know and you're ubiquitous digitally. And that's why I pay my dues in all three areas, because again, it's easy to say, oh, well, it's just organic. It's not. It's organic and it's a 3-pack. You're not getting into the 3-pack on a regular basis without authority unless you have, some exact match craziness. So, the idea being it's getting you those two. We don't know, and we talked about this before we went on, we don't know where LSA is going. There are a bunch of products that end up not making it for Google. So again, I know right now you're feeling fat and happy because you're getting those early clicks for no money. We both know that that's not remaining. So the question is, when that same case that's $60 right now is $475, then the question is, hey, if I had built a foundation in organic, and I can get those same clicks, maybe, it may be less of them, but I can get those same clicks for cost effective, let's say what turned out to be the equivalent of $60 a piece because I paid my dues with organic and I just have to maintain it. To me, that's what I love about organic is right now I can get ROI I can't get from pay-per-click, but assuming that they don't completely shut it down, there's still that opportunity to get ROI that only, the auctions are not going down, they're only going up. And that's my concern with pay-per-click.
Yeah, one of the things that interests me and concerns me is the whole I can remember when everybody we knew was spending time and effort and energy on building out their Google Plus profile because that was going to be the next big thing. And then it literally just was okay, it's no longer a supported product and bye-bye. And what I'm wondering now then is, say I'm a new lawyer, right? Because there's a bunch of new lawyers or people who are new solos who are hanging their shingle, or someone who's maybe saying, I've gotten all my business off of referrals for 2 decades, and now I need to figure out a digital approach. Well, now let me ask you a question. What's the best approach to take in this situation? Because, SEO is a long game, right? It's not something that you can do tomorrow and see results in December. So the question then becomes: do you focus yourself on a small budget SEO content and links, and put other money into products like LSA or pay-per-click to at least have some oil coming through the pipeline while you're waiting for your own stuff to pop? Or do you say, I'm gonna stay on my referral kick and really focus on content and links, for 6 months? We've talked a little bit about the Google Sandbox. I think you should explain that in your answer to this question, because not everybody knows what that is. And I'm just wondering what's the sort of the best approach in this situation, because it can seem overwhelming. And I'm somebody who's been doing it for 20 plus years. And I'm wondering now, okay, do I just say, hey, I can ride out the shot clock for another 10 years and then walk away and not have to worry about this stuff? Or do I want to build something and have something I could sell or turn over to my associates or turn over to my kids? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
Look,
I'm freaking out here, man. I'm freaking out.
amazing question that has like 17 sub questions, right?
Right.
I'm probably going to miss them. I should have taken notes on the actual question or have to go back and rewatch to get them all. But look, like most things in life, if you're being honest, it depends. It depends on so many factors. Let's start with assuming that you're in the B2C space, not the B2B space, right?
I mean, that's what I'm basically talking about, because
No,
I
I
sell to
understand. I'm
consumers.
walking the audience, right?
Right.
So if you're a B2B lawyer where it's, the odds of SEO doing you that much good, it can, but it's probably not the place to spend your first dollars, right? Get season tickets, join a club, make sure you're taking people out to lunch and dinner as often as you can, as COVID will allow, meaning that is number one. So, okay, we're in the B2C world. Now the question is, what are your revenues at? And I have my own rule that I've made. It's arbitrary. It's like anything. So I'm sure it doesn't hold up all the time, but more often than not, I use 350 as the Mendoza line. If you're over 350 and over in gross revenue a year, it's where you can afford to invest in SEO if you so choose. When you're under 350 in gross revenue, it is much harder. It's not that you don't want a website, and we'll talk about the sandbox in a second, because the age of the website makes a big difference. So starting somebody at the beginning of their career, my 2 cents is you want an age domain, because age is a huge ranking factor. So even if you can't afford real SEO, getting a website up, you buy the domain, you put some content up, you use Wix if you wanted to, ideally use WordPress to age it. But the idea being you start Google to be familiar with the URL and the content on it, period. That the sandbox is something when you first launch a website, Google doesn't immediately show you in the results. They keep you down, suppressed. Many pages, you said the second page, we're talking like third to eighth page until you pop.
Yeah.
And that popping can be anywhere from 3 to 9 months.
And I can actually speak to that, because I went into Google Search Console so I could see where it was with a website that we launched, and our average position is like 47, right?
Right.
On a site that's about 5 months, 6 months old, which means that you're talking the fourth or fifth page on average. No one's getting that far except the guy who owns the site, who's trying to figure out if it's even being indexed at all.
So this is a potential hack for our hack show. When people use pay-per-click, you come out, and I can't prove it. I mean, I can tell you anecdotally, I've never seen a white paper on it, but there is no doubt there's a correlation. If you push pay-per-click through a site, try it on one of your sites, you will get out 2 to 3 months or faster.
Wow.
It's amazing. Sort of like the same as the TV effect. Google, says that pay-per-click doesn't affect it. They are getting trust points coming through, and we have seen that time after time affecting the length of time you're in the sandbox.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense from a Google perspective, because if someone's willing to put money behind a site, and then people hit that site and maybe spend some time on that site,
Exactly. Give them trust points.
those are trust signals, right?
Right,
Those are the
exactly.
type of things that affects, in the pay-per-click world, it's called your quality score, right? But if someone goes to that site and doesn't click back and actually solves their problem, then Google can say, oh, this site must answer some questions that people need answered.
Right. Like imagine
So
if you were like trying to decide if you were to invest in a restaurant and it takes a while before you get enough customers in. But if somebody went out and handed out a ton of flyers and all these people came in and you got to speak to them on the way out and see, well, they were in that restaurant for an hour and they seemed to like it and they took a menu for ordering back, you're getting those touch points. So great. The second one, which is a longer conversation, is that now GMB has, I don't, it's not officially a sandbox, but it's essentially a sandbox period. You can't just launch a new office and say, boom, I want this to show right away. There is certainly a period of time where Google, takes before they're going to give you a fighting chance of competing in that market.
And I can actually speak to that, because I was at SMX East last October, and I heard somebody from Google give a presentation, and they said that actually, if you are about to launch an office in an area, you can actually set up your GMB up to 90 days before you actually open, and start to establish yourself in that location, because they've acknowledged that you're not going to pop on day one. So it's something that you can actually set up your GMB for. If you're opening up a second or third or fourth office, you can do it up to 90 days. If you do it before 90 days, you could wind up on a blacklist, I guess. I don't know how they do that, but they want it to be open for business within 90 days of you setting up that GMB.
Well,
So
that's the way of saying they know you're not going to be shown, so who cares? Otherwise, they would tell
yeah,
you,
maybe
don't
that's what it
set it up
is.
till you're open. So that's the craziness, right? I don't know. I assume you're not doing anything unethical. You show no hours,
Right.
but okay. So another thing, again, we're getting off topic to your question, but it's good stuff. Which is Google is now. It used to be number of reviews was not a ranking factor for GMB for the 3-pack. They're now saying it is a factor. What we had seen years ago was after the famous eyeglass incident. I think it was the New York Times article expose about a group that had on like Canal Street, New York, that had all those terrible reviews, hundreds and hundreds of them. They were like, they didn't want those people competing. It was helping them. So they said, we're cutting. I think they finally said, you know what? Size does matter. So that again, but coming back to your, what should you be doing? This is the question. I'm going to answer the question I think you are asking, which is, it's not about the new person, because we just discussed that. But what about the person who's saying, hey, I'm a referral-based practice, but I want more. Either I want to leave it to my kid, I want to sell it, I want a little bit more.
Or I just want more revenue.
Right, want more revenue. This is the dilemma. First, what is your window time-wise? Because if you're retiring the next couple of years, why bother? We're talking about this right now. To me, SEO is one of those things that's paying dividends over time, and it builds year after year, like interest on your savings account. So that in theory, the idea is you want something that's going to continue to breathe and grow and continue to multiply. So, but the piece that I'm most concerned about when people are making this decision is not, believe it or not, the SEO component. Because look, I know this, and frankly, if you wanted to do this, you could do this. You're a smart cookie. You go to SMX. If you wanted to optimize sites, you could do that. You just have passions. You take them in those directions, and you make good money doing what you're doing. But from the SEO point of view, it's not about can you do it, because you can. But two things. One, from our point of view, doing SEO, and there are a handful of us out there that do SEO, blocking and tackling with people, writing content and links, all the things you and I have talked about in prior shows, that if somebody tries to say, hey, I'm writing you a check and it's done, it works infinitely less well than if somebody partners with you and helps you with content and figures out where their touch points are so you can get real links rather than have to manufacture them. You really want to partner. If you ever allowed me the privilege of working, there's so much Jay Ruane in out there that if they could be tied digitally, it is amazing what could be done. So that's the first piece. But the second piece is something that we don't talk as much about on this show, which is, are you set up for a marketing-based practice? There's nothing better than a referral-based practice, and you have the benefit of both, right? You have your pay-per-click, some SEO, and you get a gazillion referrals. PI-wise, best cases come from referrals. Referrals are amazing. I want to take nothing away from it. That said, if you want to scale beyond whatever you're able to do with referrals, marketing is amazing, whether it be pay-per-click or organic. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And I would say it's almost more dangerous, because at least with SEO, it's a slow start. But if you turn the fire hose on and you're lucky enough to get those calls, you are lucky enough to get a cheap LSA call, great. But if you don't answer the phone and convert it, it's worthless. And if you're paying real money, if it wasn't LSA, let's say it was pay-per-click, and that phone call cost you $300 to get that phone call, and you don't monetize it, you're pissing away money. So to me, what I would say, and this is what I have long conversations. One is, are you revenue wise there? B, do you have a long enough tail that it makes sense doing SEO? But finally, are you going to morph your law firm from a non-intake based firm where referrals come in and you get back to them when you want to in 1 day, 2 day, even 3 days, 72 hours, the person's still waiting for you? We both know in the marketing world that doesn't exist. And unless you're set up for it, and people say they want it, right? People say they want a lot of things. Oh, I want more business. I want to now market. Well, unless you change your mindset and your staff's mindset, which sometimes means either additional staff or really making sure your staff is bought in. Unless you change the mindset, it doesn't matter, because even if the marketers are doing their job right, which is not a given how many red herrings there are out there, the fact is, if you don't convert your office to take advantage of that marketing, then whether you're doing LSA, pay-per-click, 3-pack or organic, it doesn't matter, because you're not going to get ROI if you're not fully, tell me, when you get a phone call on a Saturday night, what if you see a real case come through and you get an email saying there's a real case on a Saturday night, what do?
I call the person right away.
Right.
Either I do or my sales lawyer does. If the
Somebody.
sales lawyer is not available, one of my intake team members is
And if
jumping all over that to
and
be
if
able
it's
to
big
make
enough,
the. And if it's big
that
enough, I
sales
get out
lawyer is
of
getting you
I'll
on
get
the
out of bed.
phone, short of the birth of a child, and even then they might get a phone call back a
Well,
couple hours later.
you were texting me earlier today, and we had a whale on the line, and you said, "Hey, when are we going to get going on this thing?" I said, "I'm in the middle of trying to make sure somebody gets out of jail. This is a
Exactly.
big case. I'm standing down on everything else, rearranging my calendar because it's going to be a solid case that we're going to generate some decent revenue on. So that's what you have to do."
Right, but that mindset, if it doesn't come, again, do you have to be as crazy as you? No, but if you don't change the mindset of your staff, that this is not just another phone call. Again, we've phone calls we've shows on intake. Gary Falkowitz is there. Tons of people who speak on this. But the idea is, unless you change the mindset, none of it matters. So to go back to like, what should you do? It depends on all these things. So assuming you are going to answer your phone and you do have $350,000 plus in revenue, and you're in the B2C space, and the makeup of your market is not super saturated, right? That's the next piece that we could talk about, which is, if you're in a major market where it is already saturated with people with triple digit reviews, it's going to take a long time to overcome that. My philosophy, and I've had some great home runs hit. A buddy of mine in Atlanta wanted to do stuff, and he said, his office in downtown Atlanta. It's like, what should I do? It was like, well, you can keep your office there. We can even keep it on the website, but to make money, we need to move you to Western Georgia. And the idea being that we got to find a place where nobody else is fishing. And that is whether it's Western New York or Western Georgia, or somewhere outside of where the main guys are fighting. It's that intersection. You're like moneyballing populations. Where can you find population that you can then bring your content to? And again, it depends, right? If you're in a practice where you have to show up in court, yes, you can't be 3.5 hours from your main office. But if it's an area where you may have one court appearance per case and you're able to staff it appropriately, finding a way to find geography that isn't saturated, if you're talking about just starting out, that's part of the game. But if you say, hey, I'm going to be in this town, I know that I'm here for the next 22 years. Well, start building your fortress. It's an asset. Start building the house, and you may start with the house, and in a couple of years you'll do an expansion and do more, and then eventually you may put a pool in the backyard. You're able to continue to build and grow, and if you stay with best practices, eventually it will pay off. But it's not going to happen in the near term, and that's comes back to your point, which is, I think that depending on your time frame and your risk tolerance and your budget will determine how much you want to push into pay-per-click versus organic.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what it comes down to. I guess part of the mindset thing is when we talk about it, I'm reminded of that of that book. You can't teach hungry, right? And some lawyers, they're comfortable, I guess, and they're not going to call that intake at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, or it just doesn't fit into their worldview, which is fine, because I'm happy to eat their lunch. And when I call the people back, and I'm wondering if the mindset of those lawyers that tends to be maybe a boomer age lawyer, someone, or maybe older Gen X lawyers, because the younger lawyers I see are either not getting out there or putting everything into digital and not building the relationships offline. And so I think there's something to be said for being able to balance the two. But getting back to my original point, I guess the decision really comes down to, If you have a budget to take advantage of something like LSA or pay-per-click, you should certainly do that, but you should take some portion of your budget and focus on the long play because, a year ago, we knew that Google was eventually going to get into LSA because they were starting to test it in San Diego for immigration lawyers. But 2 years ago, LSA didn't exist, right? And who knows what's going to happen? And I guess in some respects, it funnels you back to what I like to do, which is building brand on social so that people recognize the name. And so when they're presented with those names, they have some familiarity with you in your local area
You know what?
to
And I
do
think
that.
that's a brilliant sort of segue to wrap this up because that's the two approaches we took. I didn't think in my market I could get to a brand saturation point through social. I thought that my market was large enough that I was not going to get to that point. So I went with, hey, I'm going to do pay per click, even though it may not be an ideal ROI, because that's the dirty secret.
Yeah,
Even when done well, Google's smarter than us and it's an auction. And very often their ROI disappears with pay per click. PI is nice because you get that home run once in a while, but in the criminal world, it's not uncommon for that to drop below 3 to 1. And if you're not careful, to 2 to 1. Now,
yeah,
I was willing to live with those because I was tracking pretty well. And tracking's not perfect, but I said, hey, as long as I'm above 2 to 1, which is no way to live, if I'm not above 3 to 1, I'm not happy at all. But if I can sort of be at 2 to 1, but I have the paid ad, the map, and the organic, to me, I was like, you know what? I'm not tracking perfectly, so maybe it's 2.5 to 1. And you know what? The fact that they're seeing that multiple times, just like Jay Ruane does that stuff to sort of get somebody used to it with the brand. I was like,
mhm.
I'm going to brand all within the SERPs. And that was sort of my model and how I developed.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a really interesting question, and one of the things that I think our listeners need to sort of take a step back and sort of identify what's your eventual goal, right? Like, do you want to have a brand that's ubiquitous? Do you want to have a niche brand that is known in the legal community, but not necessarily outside the legal community if you're going to be working for referrals? Because there's a lot of different approaches that you can take, and you really have to sort of make a conscious decision to take the right approach rather than like have it thrust upon you by inaction. I think that's really a takeaway that people should think about. Like, you can't not address these questions. You have to make decisions and move, intelligently towards your goal. You can't just sit back and say, "Well, whatever happens, happens." And I think a lot of our people who listen to this are people who want to make those next steps, but they're unsure of themselves, and we're trying to give you some information to do that. And so I think that should kind of wrap up this conversation because we've gone really long, but there's a lot of stuff that you can unpack from this. So I would definitely recommend that you sort of sit back and take this in again and sort of just think through what we've talked about in the context of your goals in life and your goals for your firm. And I think that would be very helpful to a lot of people.
Absolutely. That's good
Okay.
stuff, Jeff.
So here's what I want to do. Okay, so we're curious about what your thoughts are about Google LSA, about pay per click, about the role of it in your life. So down below in the comment section, please let us know if you're looking forward to LSA, if you're afraid of LSA, if you're getting results from LSA, if you have no idea what LSA is. Certainly let us know. We'll point you in the right direction.
And I just, again, disclaimer, Google is so screwed up right now.
Oh,
You
yeah,
live through
absolutely.
it. We have listings that are in, but not Pinkerton, approved. There were people like everything else, if you got it through early, great, but it's X number of cases. It's not, a handful of cases may have slipped through. There's plenty of opportunity. I think the bad news is that very quickly the market is going to catch up. This is not going to be years where it takes for Google to get, like with pay per click, where it's going to take years for it to catch up. A handful of cases will get through early, but if you are counting on that as your business model at $60 cases,
Oh
it's
no,
not
it's
happening.
it's not going to last. I mean, I remember my first click cost me 2 cents, and I show that slide when sometimes I give some presentations because it's mind blowing that the same search term was 2 cents is now $160,
And the idea that
$167.
your name, which nobody else should be bidding on theoretically, is like $10 it's craziness. So that when I speak to some larger advertisers, a TV advertiser where their brand means a lot, and they're just buying their name from Google, which to me is a disgrace. If I get on my soapbox, I want to, your name should be free. And if for corporations too, why should Coke have to pay for their brand? It's crazy.
It blows my mind. So here's what we're going to do next. We've got a Ryan's book review that's coming up, and what I want to do is tee this up. He just had a session with Kristen Davis, who we both know as is a coach for lawyers, and she's got a book out, and he's going to review that and give it to us. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has to say. So we're going to take a few minutes, take a break for our sponsors, and then when we come back, we'll get into Just Book It with Ryan McKean. He's going to give us a great review, and then after that, we'll come back and wrap up the show. Sound good?
It sounds great.
Awesome. We'll be right back, folks.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
Hi, it's Ryan McKean here, and I'm really excited for this week's episode of Just Book It. I've got a great book to talk to you about, and I'm excited to share it with you. This book was actually shared with me in the forum by our friend Brian Reedy, who recommended this book to me, and I devoured it. I liked it, and I think it has a lot to offer you out there listening to this podcast. And that book is Kristen David's Uplevel Your Business, Uplevel Your Life. Kristen David was an attorney who then went on to work as a consultant at how to manage a small law firm, and is now on her own as a consultant at Upleveling Your Business. She has a lot of experience both running a firm and seeing how other firms are run, and really maximizing how you can best grow and make your law firm thrive. And so this book is not very big, but what Kristen does is pack a lot of goodness into a very small book. So if you're looking for something simple, something quick, something that you can probably read in about an hour, that is going to help you grow your business, I highly recommend it. I think it was only $5.99 on Amazon. So it's a great buy. And I want to give you my 3 takeaways. One of the things that gets talked a lot about in the forums is sort of financial things and how do you make decisions. And one of the things that Kristen gave in this book, which is a question I hear a lot, and a question I think about a lot, which is, who is the next person to hire? And what Kristen does is she gives a gap analysis. And essentially what you do in a gap analysis is you write down the importance of every job on a scale of 1 to 10. Then you note who's doing that job, and then you score how well it's done. So you can be saying that, for example, a receptionist could be a 10, and your overworked paralegal is doing reception work, and it's not being done very well. So it's a 2 out of 10 that you're giving that person. So the gap there is an 8. And if you go through and you do this with every position in your firm and you're honest, it's going to jump out at you who the next person that you need to be hiring is. So I found the gap framework to be very insightful for my business, because that's something we always wrestle with. With time and money and resources being limited, we need to know who our best hire is for our next hire. Um, Kristen talks a lot about finances in this book, and finances are obviously very important. And actually, I think that they're an under-discussed topic across law firm platforms, because a lot of firms operate, hand to mouth, in, money out. And Kristen really delves deeply into the financial controls necessary to run a successful law firm. And one of the frameworks that she puts out in her book is called the rules framework. And in the rules framework, it's a simple way to increase your profitability. Rules, the R stands for rates. One way that you can increase your profitability is to raise your rates. U stands for utilization, and utilization is basically how well you are doing with what you have. So if you're having a lawyer scan the mail, you're having somebody who should be billing out at $250, $300, $400 an hour doing the work of somebody who could be doing it for $15 an hour. Their time is poorly utilized. So you need the right people in the right seats. L is leverage, which says that you should be leveraging technology. We all know that there are efficiencies with Zapier, as Tyson calls it, Zapier, and other technological tools that can make our practice more efficient. So you have to be leveraging technology. E is looking at expenses. I know our host, Jay Ruane, is big into Movember, where he looks at his financial statements and cuts every expense that's unnecessary. Well, you need to be doing that in your law firm. So E is cutting expenses, and S is speed. The faster you can shorten the time between work and payment, the more it's going to improve your cash flow and the more profitable that you're going to be. So S is speed. And finally, my third point in this book is, Kristen gives a framework for how you should be investing your money in your business. And basically, it's so simple. It's 3-to-1. Are you getting a 3-to-1 return? Whether that's from an employee, whether that's from expanding your geographical presence, or whether it's from an advertising campaign or a marketing campaign or your SEO vendor. So really, as you look at that expenses, ask yourself if you're going to get a 3-to-1. I highly recommend Kristen David's Uplevel Your Business, Uplevel Your Life. It's a quick read, a short read, and I think many out there listening to this podcast would benefit it. Till next week, thank you.
All right, Seth, great show. We had a lot of stuff to talk about early on, but that's what this Tuesday show is all about, really sort of getting into the nitty gritty. I guess you could say at the end of all of this, I was wondering if SEO is dead, but you've thoroughly convinced me that investing in SEO is something that I need to consider. I need to sit down.
It's not happening for you, but maybe for others.
No. So listen, let me tell you what I did, just so I can give the audience a thing. You know me, I am a man of a million ideas. I constantly push it out there. And so what we do is we have a running track list of everything that we want to do, every crazy idea that I have all year. We implement some, we don't implement some. Starting October 1st, we do nothing for 2 months. And we are cleaning up all of the projects that we started. We're doing visual inspections of all of our websites, making sure nothing's broken. We're doing all the grunt work, the weeding of the garden that we have to do before we get into December so we can kickstart the year straight. So there'll be no new ideas for me to my marketing team, but come December 1st.
I don't buy it for a minute, Jay. I don't buy it for a minute.
Come December 1st, I think SEO is going to be on my task list, and I would encourage everybody out there to do the same. So we're going to leave it with that. Great review by Ryan, by the way. After hearing what he had to say about Kristen, after hearing about the book, it's certainly something that I want to do. I want to reach out to her, get a session with her, and see what I can do to level up my practice.
Yeah, Kristen's amazing. I met her a number of years ago, and she just, when you're in life and somebody jumps off the page, that's her. A really special person who has a way of connecting with people, and really been neat to watch what she's done over the last few months. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, really excited about that. All right, Seth, we're going to sign off now. I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. Blue Shark Digital, Get Firm Flex, Price Benowitz and Ruane Attorneys. We're happy to be with you on this Tuesday show. Stay tuned for us on Thursday. Seth, who do we got coming up on Thursday?
We got Mario Godoy.
Yeah. You know, Mario
So
was was my leader at John Fisher's Mastermind last week. Gave me 3 great takeaways. I want to talk to him a little bit about it this Thursday, so I'm excited for this show.
No, he lives what we talk about, to firms, really interesting take on intake that we need to get into, and a lot more. He's really one of those guys that every time I hear him speak or just have a conversation, my head starts to explode because the way he processes information is just magic.
Awesome. All right, folks, so we're going to end it here. Have a great week. We'll see you in 2 days on Thursday with another edition of Maximum Growth Live. For now, I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. Goodbye. Have a pleasant evening, and we'll see you 2 days from now, 48 hours. Here we go, Seth. We'll see you in 2 days.